The past 100 years have transformed and molded Tacoma with many triumphs and challenges. Hundreds of thousands of people have walked Tacoma's streets, participated in boom times and bust times. Promises kept and promises broken, stories shared and tears shed. Through all these ups and downs, a precious few aspects of the community have remained constant beacons of hope. Around the turn of the century, the lure of lumber and maritime jobs made Tacoma a magnet for transient men. Unfortunately, many of these jobs never materialized, and in 1911, world-renowned evangelist Gypsy Smith recognized the city's plight. He had just concluded a Tacoma-wide campaign. Before leaving, he challenged a group of business and spiritual leaders to start a mission. In answer to that call, a small group of compassionate Tacomans from many of the area's prominent churches raised funds, recruited volunteers, and rented a hall on 14th Street between A Street and Pacific Avenue to serve food and offer shelter to these men. The mission officially opened its doors on March 11, 1912, under the name the Tacoma Commons Mission. Upon hearing this news, Gypsy Smith wrote a letter saying,
"I'm always glad to have news from Tacoma, but none has cheered me more than the last, telling me of my blessed child, that mission which keeps a fire burning in your city."
From the very beginning, the focus of the rescue mission has been on touching the lives of individuals. Like this man, interviewed by a Tacoma Times reporter outside the mission in 1913.
What is life like? Lived on the streets? It isn't much like life. When you once find the way to do it, you learn that the only way to live is to live right. But it's hard to live right for the man who hasn't learned how.
In 1914, another mission client was recorded as saying,
"Take the advice of a dry town habitual drunkard who's been in jail in every large city the country over. 20 years ago, I was driven from home by drink. From that day to this, I've never seen anyone belonging to me, all because of my sin. At this little mission, I was cured."
In 1915, the Tacoma Commons changed its name to the City Rescue Mission and became officially incorporated. Mission volunteers carried out all the work, providing hot meals, warm beds, and clean clothing. 10 years later, in 1925, the mission began the first of many expansions by adding a jail chaplaincy program at the Pierce County Jail, providing counseling and religious services for inmates and their families. Early on, the mission began a tradition of identifying and responding to needs. As a result, it soon filled the role of employment bureau and began organizing hospital visits and starting nightly church services. When the Great Depression hit the Northwest, the needs intensified, and the rented building used by the mission could no longer meet those needs. So, in 1939, the mission changed its name to the Tacoma Rescue Mission and purchased its first building at 1512 Pacific Avenue. All during World War II, the trustees carried out a forward-looking remodeling program on this building. Mission Superintendent Shaughnessy said,
"We're planning this post-war expansion program to meet the inevitable need of those who become tomorrow's unfortunates in the backwash of war."
Shaughnessy was proven right. And in 1946, the adjoining building at 1510 Pacific Avenue was also purchased, increasing the mission's capacity by 50%. While it was rescuing the lives of needy men, the mission was also changing the lives of those who worked there. Mr. and Mrs. J.H. Hyde volunteered at the mission for 9 years. A letter from Mr. Hyde dated October 1949 said,
I did not receive any compensation for the work at the mission, but as I look back over that interesting period, I believe they were the most blessed years of my life.
The 60s saw continued expansion of the mission's reach. A doctor's donation of a residence and clinic allowed for the opening of Hope Home, which put a roof over the head of mentally or emotionally disturbed women. And by the end of the decade, the New Life Clinic, today's New Life program, opened, a counseling service offering alcoholics a chance for recovery. More growth and more changed lives occurred in the 1970s. The men's mission added counseling programs for homeless and chemically dependent men, along with a free medical and dental clinic operated by volunteer doctors and nurses. The Emergency Family Shelter opened in 1971, and for the first time, emergency housing was available in Tacoma for single women and parents with children. Demand for family housing continued to grow, and the mission bought an apartment house for families in distress. The community continued to notice the good work. In 1979, a News Tribune reporter spent Thanksgiving at the mission and wrote,
It was not a line of misfits, drunks, and winos. It was mostly men in hibernation, holding up for the winter until their jobs open up again next spring.
The article quoted Joe, a 39-year-old mission client.
A man shouldn't have to live like this. There's no work out there now. A low-paid laborer is nothing to live on after the job runs out. A man shouldn't be degraded because he can work only with his hands.
In 1982, the mission's New Life Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation Program was formalized, and the mission continued to build programs and facilities to help lift people to self-sufficiency. A News Tribune article from July 23, 1988, on the first New Life program graduation quotes,
Jim Hawley, a 34-year-old former heroin addict, found God and sobriety during his months in the New Life program. He said simply, I found something to live for.
In 1988, a youth department was added, as well as The Inn, which provided advocacy for street youth and a place for them to retreat from street life. The Challenge Learning Center also opened in the 80s, offering adults literacy education, GED preparation, and more. These efforts caught the attention of the national magazine The Saturday Evening Post, which wrote,
The Tacoma Rescue Mission does outstanding work in helping people help themselves.
In more recent years, the mission has continued to grow and serve the needs of the community. The downtown Tacoma campus opened in 2001. In 2010, the Adams Street Family Campus opened with 16 family-size apartments and 20 emergency shelter rooms for women and families in need. 2011 held another official name change, from the Tacoma Rescue Mission to the more inclusive, the Rescue Mission.
Since 1912, for over 100 years, the Rescue Mission has been helping the poor, the hurting, and the hungry. It started out as a small endeavor a century ago, and now it's become obviously a very big endeavor. But you know what's never changed? Our purpose, our core, our focus. It's always been about people. It's been about the people we serve, and it's been about the people, the consecrated men and women who volunteered, who gave their resources, who gave their time to love the poor. When the Rescue Mission started 100 years ago, we never imagined that we'd serve anything other than homeless men. But now we have hundreds of children, hundreds of moms and women who are in this. We're talking about families. So the Rescue Mission has changed because society has changed. And now we're having to reach different kinds of people in different ways. But our core purpose remains the same, to help the hurting, the homeless, and the lost.